Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Lunch and Learn webinar by AMPIA. My name is Jenny Steele. I'm a producer here in Calgary, and I'm honored to be with you today as your host. Now, today we delve into the thought-provoking documentary called A Young Man, which actually won 2 Rosie Awards this year, one in the category of Best Unscripted Production over 30 minutes and Best Director for Unscripted over 30 minutes. But before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which include the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. We would like to thank Matt Waterworth at No Cap Content for his technical assistance today, along with Alberta Film, the Edmonton Arts Council, and Telefilm for financially assisting AMPIA in offering this webinar and for supporting professional development in our province. And we'd also like to invite you to participate in today's webinar by putting any questions or comments you have in the chat column to the right of your screen. And I'll do my best to get to most of those questions within the hour. So make sure and participate because we'd love to hear from you. Now, with that said, AMPIA is pleased to welcome our 2 guests today. We've got Holly Fortier, who is the founder and owner of the Indigenous film and media marketing company, Two Canoes Media, and a member of Fort McKee First Nation. She co-directed A Young Man. Hi, Holly. And we also have Geordie Day, who is from the Calgary-based production company, Pyramid Productions. He DP'd and edited the documentary. Hey, Geordie, thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Well, we can't wait to hear from both of you, so I'm going to dive right in because we've got lots to cover. So, Holly, we'll start with you. Now, can you tell us how you got involved in filmmaking and what makes your production company so unique, and why does it play an important role in telling stories in Alberta and beyond?
Well, thank you, Jenny. Thanks for having us here today. It's just a great honor. And thank you for that land acknowledgement. It's so beautiful. And I'm from Fort McKee First Nation. We're from Northern Alberta, and we're one of Canada's 634 First Nations. And I have always loved the stories that have been passed down to us by oral tradition. But as I was raising my kids here in Treaty 7 territory, moms, we want to get our kids doing a whole bunch of things. So I got them to be background performers on a show called North of 60.
Yes.
And remember? And yes. That's how I started. And so what happened with that was I met an amazing actor named Gordon Tutusis. You guys may remember him from Legends of the Fall. He was the voice and the strong character of in that film. And he said to me, "You should be in film." And I was like, no, I'm too shy. I don't want to do it. He goes, "No, you're going to be in film and you and I are going to work together." Amazing. So I ended up being a stand-in stunt person. And I did work with Gordon on a film. And I remember the film, it had another lead Hollywood character, I'm not going to mention his name, who was quite demanding on set. But Gordon was so humble, so kind, made everybody, he served people, coffee. Do you want a coffee? And he was just the sweetest guy. And I just loved working with him. And I started, then I became John Scott, who's an Alberta legend in film and television. I became his right hand working as an animal wrangler. He provides, horses and all of cowboys and all of that for films. And I learned a lot from him, but I think what was really profound for me is when I built a friendship with Larry Day. And Larry became such a great friend. And I said to him, "You know what I'd really love to do, Larry? Let's do a film on my mother's Indian residential school story." So we got funding, we did the film, and hundreds of thousands of people have watched it. You can see that on YouTube. It's called The Mother's Voice. And we really loved the experience of working together. So we started talking about actually forming a film company. And I remember one of the people that I really appreciate is Lisa Micha. She's been working in film and television forever. And I saw her as a keynote with her film partner, and I talked to them afterwards. She's an Indigenous woman. He's a white man. And I said, how is this partnership? They said, it's perfect. The balance of male and female, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And so Larry and I formed a company called Two Canoes, where it's really, two canoes going down the river, never crossing paths, moving in the same direction, and just going together. And so it was really important. We formed this film company. We're having great success and just doing all these great films like A Young Man.
That's so amazing here. I think Larry was a mentor to so many of us, including myself. He essentially took a chance on me as well and started my career in television. So I think he's someone who has led so many of us on our path today. And I'm still so grateful today. Geordie, you obviously come from a well-known production family, obviously at Prima Productions, and I had the pleasure of working with most of you. Now, how did you come to love visual storytelling, and how did Two Canoes Media, well, I know Holly mentioned this, but how did they connect with Pyramid Productions?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, it was, so Pyramid started because my folks started a movie review show, essentially, the movie show.
Movie show, yeah.
So they were always watching movies and talking about movies, and so I think I just kind of grew up in that space. They were getting award screeners, so we were watching like 2 movies a night. We were like talking about movies over dinner.
Yeah.
So it sort of formed like an obsession, and then so I went to journalism school, and then film school, and I think my parents talked mostly about movies kind of from the writing perspective because they were writers by trade, I'd say. And I think it was kind of at film school that I started to kind of think about film in a more visual sense of like, why is the camera pushing in? Why is it sliding? Why is it doing these things? How is that helping tell the story emotionally? And how does that make the viewer feel? Yeah.
You focused on the technical aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really where I fell in love with like the visual aspect of it for sure.
Amazing. I love that. And I think the movie show is, to this day, we all remember it, right? It was one of those shows that was just, I think, so iconic of our generation. We all grew up watching Kristian and Larry.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Better suited to answer the question of how Pyramid and Two Canoes actually came to form a partnership.
Yeah. And I know you touched on that, Holly, earlier, but anything you want to add to that?
Well, it was just really beautiful. It was a great partnership. Right from the very beginning, a lot of respect, and it was a good balance because we could each teach each other things, and so we talked a lot, and we've very passionate about what the work that we're doing. It's super exciting storytelling from an Indigenous lens.
Absolutely. Now, with that said, can you tell us what the documentary A Young Man is about and why it's such an important story to share?
It's so important. It's about a 24-year-old man from Siksika First Nation named Kristian Ayoungman, who was murdered in the town of Strathmore. And the 2 brothers, who were white, were charged for murder. And it never really got media attention. And so it was an important story to share. And there's so many layers and elements of this story that just make it incredible for us as filmmakers, the experience that we had filming it, but also how it's being received by the audience. And so it's a very powerful film. And if you haven't seen it, I just would invite people to watch it. It's just an incredible film.
It absolutely is. I mean, watching it just the emotions, and like you said, it's a story I hadn't heard up until that documentary, and it's such an important story to share. And I'm at the end of this documentary, at the end of our discussion, I'll ask where we can have our audience view it in the future, because they need to see it. Now, Holly, what angle did you take to make this documentary, and what was involved in securing all of the interviews?
Well, it's a super interesting story. I kind of have a philosophy that what's meant for you will come to you. And I have 2 businesses. So I do filmmaking now, but also I do Indigenous awareness training. So I had been working with a young gal named Estokimi Smith, who's from Siksika. She was the Calgary Stampede First Nation princess. And she took on a role at the town of Strathmore called Indigenous Relations or something along that line for the town of Strathmore. And she's like, can you help me do, some give me some ideas what I can do for anti-racism work for the town of Strathmore. And I said, well, I'll do an Indigenous awareness training for you. So I was driving to the town of Strathmore, and I had a friend that called me, and she's just checking in on you. What are you doing? And I said, I'm going to the town of Strathmore. And so what happened with that, she said, did you watch the news last night about a man that got murdered in the town of Strathmore from Siksika? So when I was setting up my Indigenous awareness training that day, I said to Aistokmi, have you heard the story about Kristian who was murdered? She goes, that's my cousin. And I was just so blown away by this young gal's, just her attitude. Like, she brought all these people, it was like from every department of the town of Strathmore together to have a cultural sensitivity workshop with me. So what happened with that, she said, you know, what can we do more? And I said, film. Film has a great shareability, has a far reach, and we really should do a film about Kristian. And so Larry and I made an arrangement to meet with Melodie. Now, we've got to remember this is all during COVID, so it was everything was like a little bit tougher, right? And so we met with Melodie, Aistokmi, and another gal from the town of Strathmore. And Melodie opened up our meeting. She said, can we pray first? So she said a prayer in Blackfoot, and she did it in sign language. She taught us how to do the prayer in sign language. And it was off to a good start. And she just shared, I've been asked to tell my story. It's a hard story. I don't trust anybody. But I had relationship. My dad had been adopted out at Siksika by one gun. My dad belonged to the Brave Dog Society, which is the law, the police. It's still an old society of the Blackfoot people. I knew the Ayoungman family. And so she really trusted me with the story. And of course, right away, you know how Larry is such a big heart, warm person, so approachable, so gentle. And she just wanted us to do her story. So we went out to the parking lot and we just stared at each other and went, this is big and this is beautiful and this is an honor.
Oh, I love hearing that, because I find with documentary making, it's so important for the subject to have a connection with the filmmakers. That changes everything when they feel they can open up, be honest with you, open with you. And I can just imagine how comfortable she felt with you and Larry. And of course with Geordie. Now, with that said, we have a few clips to share with everyone today. The first one focuses on the key interview with Kristian's mom, Melodie. This is a candid, heart-wrenching conversation with Melodie.
As we're coming down the highway, the normal route we take to Strathmore was closed off. You can see police down that road. I got a call from the RCMP. They asked where I was, and I said, why? Can we come see you? Why? Why do you want to come see me? Something's wrong. What's wrong? And then as I came driving down this road, and the RCMP were parked here, there was a couple of trucks. I said, okay, I'm here. You wanted to see me? Do you have a son named Kristian? And I was like, what? Kristian? What do you mean? What's going on? I said, yes, Kristian's my son, Kristian Ayoungman. And they said he was a homicide victim. My son? Where's my son? I want to see my son. Where is he? Where is he? I want to go to him right now. Bring me to him. And they said he got shot and he passed away. And I said, no. Not my boy. No, not Kristian. No, what happened? I said, there's an investigation going on. We're getting to the bottom of everything. I said, where is he? I want to go to him. And they said, you can't go to him right now. I said, I want to go to my son right now. Is he still on that road? I remember holding the side of my sister's truck, and I remember dropping, and I remember somebody kept trying to lift me up, And I remember jumping around and yelling, my boy, not Kristian, no! No, not Kristian, no! When I was in that moment of shock is where I was asking them, who did this? Tell me. We're doing an investigation. And I think I even told them, you didn't catch them? And then Brooker arrived and they brought him to me and he had on Kristian's. He still had blood on him from Kristian. And when I saw Brooker, and he said, I didn't get to change. I said, okay. I said, I don't care. Let me hold you. And I hugged him.
It's so, I think any mom who's watching that scene, it's still every time, it's just so heart-wrenching. And I'm just curious, Holly, how did you prepare for such an emotional and sensitive interview? And how did your extensive background in Indigenous awareness training help you with this interview and with the rest of the project?
Yeah, it is a very powerful scene. And, I do Indigenous awareness training. I've been doing it for many years. And I think my family is all about justice and sharing our stories. And I think that, most Canadians don't know the story of us, when Europeans first came, they really depended on First Nation people. We had a meaningful and respectful relationship. But as more and more Europeans came, they started to uproot us, relocate us to the reserves, and reserves are Crown land. And that was totally the game changer. And then when they took our children to go to Indian residential schools, we're still in the legacy of that. Every Indigenous person in Canada is impacted by the legacy of residential school and all the policies of assimilation that were created within the Canadian Indian Act. And I love sharing the story of Indigenous awareness training because even though Indigenous people have had historical trauma, have had personal trauma, we are still, I just really believe and know that we're so strong and resilient, and we're kind, we're full of humor, we're generous. Like there's so many good qualities, and highly successful, and I just feel that these stories are very important because I think Canadians can say, wow, they went through all that. And then when you see Melodie's approach in how she moves forward, it is so mind-blowing. She's such a role model to me. I become such great friends with her, and she's so inspirational. And so I will say in that specific scene, that was Larry. And Larry had the ability, like even in my mom's residential school documentary that we did, he had the ability to really pull those stories out. And I always said to him, you know what your superpower is, Larry? You're a listener. You have this thing. You're such a great listener. And that's what he was doing. And she trusted it and she let it go. And it was just, that was Larry Day.
That's the key word, is trust. You have to trust that interviewer so much in a moment like that, to just let go and release. And you can feel that. And it was just so raw. And so it was so meaningful. And I'm just so happy she was able to open up like that. As well. Now, Geordie, what kind of approach did you take to create the look for all of these interviews? And how does it benefit a project to be both the DP and the editor?
Yeah, question. I think so. For my motive is always about what best establishes theme, and it's just like from a storytelling perspective, not necessarily about making things pretty. But from like a technical perspective for this film, we shot on like a really wide Zeiss zoom lens. And the idea there was that, like if you're going to shoot a verite, you can either shoot it on long lenses or you can be like right in it and shoot on wides. And I think we like established early on, we wanted to be in it. We wanted to feel like we were right there with Melodie. And she had gained enough trust with Holly and Larry that she was okay with us doing that. So that sort of translated into the interview as well. And then I think from like a theme perspective, setting was kind of just a big part of the storytelling. Holly does a great job contextualizing in the film through the VO, like right at the start. We have Siksika and we have Strathmore, and they're right beside each other, but they have this like deep-rooted tension between the two. I think like visually we needed to think like, how can we show the contrast between these two communities? Strathmore is a more like prototypical Canadian suburb, and it's like affluent, and it's a rodeo town. And obviously Siksika is a little bit more impoverished, but also like culturally there's this huge connection to family and to land. And I think that played a part in the mentality of the interviews as well, like placing people in the appropriate settings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And you can feel that, like it was so visually captivating. Each interview, where they were set, you were just taking it all in as you watched the documentary.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, very well done. Now, Holly, back to you. Now, you and the late Larry Day co-directed A Young Man, which we kind of mentioned earlier. Now, he passed away suddenly during the final stages of editing the documentary. Why was this story so important to Larry?
Yeah, that was such a shock, and I still feel it today, and I just can't imagine what his family and everybody, including yourself, like we just, it was so sudden and heartbreaking. And, one thing that I really appreciate about Larry, he was very much about justice, and he became such an ally, and he always, like, he actually sat in one of my Indigenous awareness trainings, and he wrote piles of notes. And when we'd be having meetings, and he'd just write all sorts of documentation and be pulling things up on the internet and researching, and he really was an ally. And he had so many of us would look to, as Indigenous people, we were like, Larry was, my best friend. Like, so many of us would say that, because he just had this way of like making us feel like we were his best friend. And I just think that this story was really important to him, because he realized the responsibility that we had to share such a powerful story. And, the thing that was really beautiful to us is this mother, her son was murdered, and her response is, she was raised culturally, and she said, Siksika way, we don't fight violence with violence.
Yeah.
And she said, there can't be any more violence. So the town of Strathmore and Siksika have got to work together. And that is amazing. And I've heard her speak many times. I've heard her say it many times. She honestly, from the bottom of her heart, believes it. And I think that Larry would be so proud that, we've what we have done accomplished and where the film has gone.
I agree. And I don't want to give too much away, but the way you mentioned how Melodie deals with the trauma, there's this one scene that I think a lot of mothers could have gone a different route on how she dealt with it. And you see her, the way she handled it. And it was just, it melts your heart on how she can just choose to move forward in a positive and healing light.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, Holly, you've got 3 decades of experience in film, TV. We got to hear a little bit about it in the beginning. But Larry also took you under his wing as a director. And like you said, he made you feel like you were one of his best friends. Now, how did his guidance help you along the way? And what advice did he give you that stands out the most?
He was really good at explaining things in a simple way. And we met a lot. And it was Larry Day and the executive vice president of Pyramid Production, Sheila Ray, who had worked with Larry for decades. And Jenny, you probably know her. And she's so lovely. And we met all the time. And we have phone calls, we'd have Zoom calls, and we had a clear communication. And I loved it that when he was, the whole process of film, he would show me the notes and just all the little different ideas and as far as every, the editing, the music, the scenes, and everything, that he communicated it very well with me. And I learned a lot. And I'm so thankful that Sheila is still, such a mentor to me, a right hand. She's become a very, very dear friend. And I'm so thankful for her, because she's now, my role model, mentor, teacher. And of course, Geordie is the most amazing cinematographer. And I love, just a comment that Geordie just made, you can understand how great it is to work with someone with that big of a heart and that amazing skill. And so the whole team, as we know in film, it's not one person, it's a whole team. And I think we have a great team, and I'm so proud of us.
Absolutely. Amazing. And I know it's not in the questions, Geordie, but I'd like to ask you the same thing. I know obviously, being Larry's son, he gave you advice throughout your entire life, but from a film and technical perspective, was there a piece of advice that you think stands out the most that your dad gave to you?
Yes, for sure. I think, so I don't actually have like a specific quote in mind, but I think his mentality in storytelling was always emotion first. He was actually like a pretty soft guy. And I think a very like empathetic person. And I think that's why like his favorite thing to do were the interviews. And I think he was successful in interviews because he was empathetic. So he knew the right questions to ask, and he knew the right questions to get people to open up. And that's why that first clip was that I think that was the reason we showed that first clip, because I think it's the most powerful scene in the documentary. And it's not really all that fancy from like a cinematic perspective. It's just, interview, and it's just Melodie talking. But oftentimes those are like kind of the best moments. And he was so good at getting that.
That's all you need. You don't need the distraction of anything else. The focus is on her. And empathy was.
Just a side note, the distraction on that, it was so funny. Like, I know that's such an intense scene, and this is how focused they were, because she had a little dog that would not stop barking. And Larry said, "Can you go take the dog outside and play with the dog?" And Larry was so focused on that scene. So you would never know that there was this barking dog, or there was no distraction. He was so, lasered in and focused on that scene. And then there's this little barking dog. So that's how like brilliant they are as filmmakers, It was really, really good.
Oh, I love that tidbit. Now you and your team filmed this story over the course of 6 months, starting in January of 2021. And parts of that coverage involved legal proceedings. Now, we have another clip to show the audience here. This one is of Melodie getting ready to go to court.
I always put this on before I go. It has his hockey number on the back, and this necklace here. My mom beaded this, so I have him with me in a sense, and all the support of all the lives that he touched when I put all these on, and that helps me. So every day before court, I make sure I call my ancestors, my loved ones, to be with me, because it's a really hard thing to go through, and to keep me strong, because we love him and we miss him.
Now, Geordie, can you talk about that scene and tell us about the kind of access that you had to Melodie while filming this doc?
Yeah, I mean, the access was incredible. I think so that, I mean, Holly spoke about this earlier, like about establishing the trust with Melodie, and I think that credit goes to her and my dad, obviously. But like once I came on board and was filming with her, she was just so open, and I think most importantly, just so emotionally open. You see that in the interviews, and you see, and like the way I like to shoot is, you know, right up in people's grill. Honestly, like I like, yeah, I want to be in it and like following her around, and she was so open in terms of allowing us to do that. So it was really incredible. It allowed the film to work. Was her openness.
Absolutely. You can feel that. Now, it's increasingly difficult to fund documentaries, but this form of content plays such an important role in society today. Now, can you guys explain the unique funding model involved in the making of this film and how you came across the opportunity?
Yeah, I think Holly, you're probably better to answer this question because you spoke to it earlier, right? It was through a Stoke and me, and that's how you guys linked up with the town of Strathmore.
Yeah, the town of Strathmore was very willing to put, you know, the money out for this project. They realized the importance of it. Starting from the top leadership, the mayor of the town of Strathmore is all about reconciliation and right relations, and it just trickles down from there. And they were all on board. We put together a budget for them, and they accepted it. They even had a big screening in the town of Strathmore, a big event, of course during COVID, but they had, you know, honors, songs, drumming, dancing, a big blow-up screen outside. They provided hot beverages for people. They had big fires lit and made a really nice event of it. And they are just very supportive. And we've done some other work actually now with the town of Strathmore in film, but they are very much generous, and they have believed in us. And I really appreciate the relationship that Two Canoes has with the town of Strathmore for sure.
Wonderful. Now, the next clip we're going to show shows an important scene at the courthouse. Now, it was one that involved the news media, as they were there alongside your crew to also cover. So we'll play the clip right now.
The number of members of Siksika First Nation that have attended this case throughout has been phenomenal. It's clear that that whole community is grieving and helping Melodie grieve.
I just like to thank each and every one of you for being out here today. I know my son has impacted each and every one of us, and I thank you all for all your support, your love, your prayers. It really means a lot to our family because Kristian was a very special boy, and he grew into a very fine gentleman. My heart is touched today. Let's continue to move forward in a good way. We're not about violence. We're good people. We're kind. We're loving. We're here for him because we love him and we miss him.
Now, Geordie, how big of a crew did you have for that scene, and what was your approach given that everything had to be filmed in real time?
It's funny, Holly and I were just talking about that scene. So that actually came together super quick. Like I think we decided we were going to shoot that maybe like an hour or two before,
Oh, wow.
because it wasn't like it all came together very quickly. You know, I think Melodie had let Holly and Larry know that some people from Siksika were going to come together and in support of Melodie during the trial. And so that was a really small crew. That was just me, my dad, and Steve. I think that first day at the courthouse that we went to, and so it was actually pretty challenging because I was running audio and doing and trying to operate, trying to kind of catch everything at once. And I remember asking my dad, I was like, "Do you want me to be getting more like reaction shots of of everybody from Siksika, or do you want me to get Melodie?" And he was like, "Oh, I want you to get both." I was like, "Okay."
Okay.
So kind of trying to get like the reaction shots and show the scope of the support, and then catch Melodie during the more emotional moments, and he was giving me a hand with that too. He's like, oh, I want this from Melodie for this moment. I want her on camera. So yeah, it's pretty run and gun, and I think in those moments that's when it helps to be involved in the edit too, because you can start kind of editing in your head, and that makes it a little bit easier for sure.
Mm-hmm. The run and gun, and it also makes it more raw, right? Because you're literally right in there doing everything and trying to juggle it all.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of tell when you watch it back, but like there's a lot of adjusting going on, but it's documentary, so it's all good.
And no one can tell. You did a fabulous job, Jerry. So no, you did great. Now, Holly, back to you. Now, what, if any, challenges did you face filming the doc with the news media being there as well? Oh, is Holly frozen?
Sorry, I froze there. With the news media at the courthouse. Is that what we're? Yeah. Well, like he said, Larry phoned me and he said, I'm going to go to court. And I said, I was out of town, and we were invited just as supporters of Melodie, not as two canoes to, she became friends with us, and she just wanted us to, be invited to things. And Larry's like, I'm taking Geordie. Geordie was actually on another shoot, and he canceled that shoot to come. It was like a very spontaneous thing. So I'm so thankful, because that scene is so powerful. Mm-hmm. And what happened with that was Black Lives Matter was set up. Remember, Geordie? They were set up with their PA system, their microphone and everything. And they actually went, okay, what you guys are doing is really important. We're going to step aside. You can borrow our equipment, because we didn't bring that equipment, or Melodie didn't. That was from the Black Lives Matter protest. And so, just things fall into place like that. And the really beautiful thing about that is that it wasn't until afterwards, I think when the doc was finished, where Melodie was talking about the court scene. And she said, Larry came into court with me, and he sat beside me, and he was just like a big brother, so supportive of me through that whole process. And that was really beautiful, because, it just, as filmmakers, we're not just like motionless and going through this process. We get invested into the story, and we were very, very invested and care very deeply for this family.
Absolutely. I like how you mentioned that, because it's almost like that phone call when she first let you know she was going to court wasn't to bring you to film it. It was there to support her and be with her, because that's how close you guys got. Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, once again, obviously, huge congratulations on your two Rosie Awards in September. Now, Geordie, I was there that night and I saw you. You had the big smile on your face accepting that award, and it was such an amazing moment for all of you. You're really proud to be there on behalf of your dad. Now, what do you think he would have said to you if he could have? What do you think he would have said if he had been there to accept the honors? And how is this recognition a tribute to your father?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think because I've witnessed him through his whole career making docs. Because even like when I was a kid, he would like bring home cuts of documentaries, and he'd watch documentaries, like his documentaries, and I'd see him like talking about them and giving notes. And I know the last couple of years with Two Canoes, he seemed to be enjoying the work more than ever. He was particularly passionate about this project. He was very, very excited about it. And so I felt very fortunate to have been able to work on it with him, and to work on it with Holly, and to work on it with Melodie. Like, it was such an honor. And so it's just a really, a really awesome thing to be able to have done before he passed. And I think he would have been really excited. Like once the film, like, he passed, he had written a script for it, and we had a rough cut going, and then he passed, and he was really, really excited. Like, we kind of knew that there was something special. Mm-hmm. in part just because Melodie was so emotionally open, and we had some pretty powerful scenes in there, and it's just such an incredible story, and a story that really was, as Holly mentioned, was kind of under the radar, like not a lot of people were talking about. So I think he would have been really excited that the film did go on. This little indie film did go on to have a relatively successful film festival run and get into San Francisco and win the documentary and animation festival, and to premiere in Calgary. I think he would have been, and then go on to win at the AMPIAs. I think he would have been really, really excited.
Absolutely. And it was, even the timing was almost special. Like, he passed away exactly a year to the day that the Rosies were being held when you guys received that recognition. Like, there's just something about all of this that just feels so connected.
For sure.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate because, we were so saddened by that. I remember Larry always saying to me, the best is yet to come. He was very excited about our company, very excited about the projects that were coming in. He always said the best is yet to come. And when he passed, we weren't sure what we were going to do with Two Canoes, what was going to happen with it. And, we're very fortunate that Kirsty, his wife, stepped in and said, let's keep the partnership going. Let's keep going. And, we still have the same crew. We still have the same team, and we're still doing the same, vibe, or, per se, that Larry had. And so we're fortunate that we can still keep going, and the best is yet to come.
I believe it. I believe it. Now, you mentioned earlier, A Young Man has been on the festival circuit. Where has it been shown, and what has the response been to the film?
Yeah, so we played Dream Speakers, played at Pocahontas, and then San Francisco and Documentary and Animation Film Festival. Those two are Oscar qualifiers, as is the Calgary International Film Festival. And I think the response has been pretty good. It won the Documentary and Animation Festival, and they urged us to submit to the Oscars as a short. So I'd be to get shortlisted. We'll see. But the response has been really strong, I think. And Holly's been able to go to a lot of the screenings, and so maybe you can talk about that a little bit, Holly. I know that your words have really moved people after the screenings at the Q&As.
Yeah, it's been amazing to go to the film festivals. I'm going tomorrow to Richmond, Virginia, to the Pocahontas Reframed, which is a huge Indigenous film festival. They're paying my flight, my hotel. It's a very organized, well-run festival. So I'm super excited about that, to meet other Indigenous creatives. And so we love it. And I remember the night at the Rosies, I remember we were so happy. And Geordie, oh my God, you're so cute, Geordie. He was like, it's fun to win. And I was like, it's so fun to win. Like, it just was great. We feel deeply honored we won here in Calgary.
Yeah. It's fun to win, but it was also so deserved. I mean, being able to finally see the doc, you guys took home every award you deserve, and probably more. It was such everything about this doc. It was heartfelt. It was so well done, from the technical aspect to the emotional aspect. Huge kudos to both of you and the entire team.
And also Stokemy and Melodie, like, they were beyond excited. They cannot believe that this is happening. And it's those two, really, that, yeah, I'm so proud of them.
I am too. Who had the honors of telling Melodie that you guys won the Rosie?
Oh, I text her like the second.
Did you? And what was her reaction?
Oh, she was just like, she's like an emoji girl. She's a teacher. She's going for her master's in education, and she teaches young children right on the nation at Siksika. And so she has a big heart. So she's like an emoji girl. and meme. So it's like her meme of being all excited and all the emojis. Like, she's just darling. Oh my gosh.
I love hearing that. Now, we're getting close to the end here, so I just want to remind anybody in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments section, and I'll be sure to get to them before we end our webinar here in the next little bit. Now, Holly and Geordie, what do you think about the future of Indigenous filmmaking and storytelling, and where do you think we'll be in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, Jenny, you got to remember back in the day, cowboy and Indian movies, we grew up with these unconscious biases of us being savages. You know, there'd be wagon trains just heading west, wanting to, just stick their claim and settle somewhere and build their homestead. And then we hear dun 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 dun, and there's that one Indian on the mesa, kind of camouflaged up there, and get his friends. They're going to come and circle the wagon with their weapons, war paint, and go kill innocent people. And I grew up where I received a lot of racism because of those films. I was called terrible names like squaw, wagon burner, the whole joke about, are you going to scalp? Film is very influential. And if you want to study that more, there is a really great older film called Real Injun. It's on Prime, actually. REEL, Injun, and it just talks about 100 years of misrepresentation in cinema. And I remember when I was working, in the Alberta film industry, I got invited to Libby, Montana, to go do a ceremony for The Revenant, and the main character in The Revenant was going to go over these waterfalls, and they said. Chivo and Alejandro were the director and cinematographer, of course, so amazing, brilliant filmmakers. And they said, and they're Indigenous from Mexico City. They said, would you come and do a ceremony? So we did a smudge, and all the cast, crew, and all their gear had to go by boat down to the location. And so we said, if anybody wants to come and do an individual smudge, we'll pray for you. And I looked, and there was a lineup. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is I grew up with racism in film, and that was a pivotal moment that we're leaning into, different stories, and people are embracing Indigenous representation. I have a friend that was here in Alberta last summer, and she's Comanche out of Oklahoma, and she produced Prey, which is a Predator franchise. And I had lunch with her a couple of weeks ago in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she said she's had over 300 interviews. And she has, because it's huge, she's a big producer on like a big box, 21st Century Fox, Indigenous woman. And she sent me a picture this morning, and she was at the White House. And I was like, you're killing it, sister. Keep going. So that's such a beautiful example that we are out there, and it's getting bigger. And Indigenous voice in film is so important. Representation matters. And I am just so super blessed that I have Geordie, Sheila, the whole team at Pyramid. Like, I couldn't do it without them, but I do want to continue to tell our stories. They're so powerful.
The best is yet to come. Now, yes. Now, with that said, Bonnie has a great question here. So what's next for Two Canoes? What do you have on the horizon?
Oh my gosh, this is huge. Geordie, you go with this one.
Okay. Well, we're doing lots of docs all the time, like within the corporate space, and we're working on a documentary right now on the Pope's apology in Rome, in Canada, that we've started production on, because obviously those apologies have happened, and are shopping around and have still working on getting the funding and still working on the documentary, but really exciting stuff. I think the footage looks really good. We have our characters established, and we're pretty excited about it.
Wow, that's going to be a huge story. Is there any idea on when that will be released, or when the timing of the project?
I think we're still working it out, but I think we're hoping to get that done this year for sure. Well, not calendar year, like within a year from now.
Yeah.
Not before January, but
Geordie's actually humble here because he went to the Vatican.
Yeah.
What?
And the footage will move you with emotion that outside the same institution that, created residential schools. There was Indigenous people in full regalia, drumming and dancing. And there was even bishops and priests in their robes joining in, Italian locals. It's so emotional. And then Geordie went to, followed him on his tour on Canadian soil at Musqueam, Quebec, and Iqaluit. And the footage that we have is amazing. And it's just wait till you see it. It's going to be very powerful.
Geordie, you're being very modest. Please, you have to tell us about what it was like to be at the Vatican.
Yeah, and I should mention. So the doc we're working with, the documentary we've been following, Brandy Marin, who's a Métis journalist. She's from Stony Plain, just outside of Edmonton, and sort of through her experience, following people she's following as a journalist and dealing with her own trauma as an intergenerational survivor. Yeah, and so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she's sort of been a partner on this, but the experience was incredible. So when the apology happened in Rome, and I know that this was covered somewhat in the media, but it was such a magical moment. It's really difficult to put into words, but when the delegation came out, they came out with drummers and everyone was in their regalia, and they went into St. Peter's Square, and everybody held hands for a round dance in the square. And it was particularly special because the Vatican police weren't exactly welcoming to anyone in the delegation or to any of the media, but in this moment they sort of turned a blind eye and allowed this to happen. And there were people from all around the world, tourists and Italians, who didn't necessarily understand the context, but were so moved by the moment, and they joined in. And so there was like this giant circle of people holding hands, and it was like it like rained and like the sky opened up, and there was like it was such a like wild, special, magical moment to witness. So that'll be something I'll remember for the rest of my life for sure. So I feel very grateful that I had the opportunity to go. I'm pretty excited about the documentary. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really special.
Wow. Well, we can't wait to see it. We've got Lolly here asking Geordie, what was her name of the Indigenous filmmaker in Stony Plain?
So she's predominantly a journalist. Her name's Brandy Marin. I can, she's a journalist, Brandy Marin. Thanks, Sheila.
Hi, Sheila.
She does amazing work. She, she writes for the New York Times. She writes for Al Jazeera English, and she had a book come out this summer that was the #1 book in Canada. So she's really making big waves, and we're really excited to be working with her on this.
Absolutely. Now, Holly and Geordie, I know our audience hasn't seen your beautiful documentary yet. Where and when can they view it?
So you can find Ayoungman. Just type in Ayoungman. It's one word on YouTube, and it's through the Strathmore site.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, Geordie and Holly, I can't thank you both enough for your time today. It was so wonderful talking to you both and getting a real feel for the behind the scenes of a young man. And I just can't congratulate you both on your 2 Rosie Awards. What's yet to come? I know it's just going to be, like we said, the best is yet to come for both of you. So a huge congrats. And thank you so much to our audience for being here today and sharing your time with us. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. Next week, we've got the producers Neil Grant and Dominique Keller, who will be talking about their 13-part docuseries called Rodeo Nation. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for today's AMPIA Lunch and Learn, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks so much. See you next time.